千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Daodejing by Lao Zi. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now. To be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process of the Tao. So the Chinese title for chapter 60, 大国章. I have seen this particular chapter title in most of the Chinese commentaries. There is one particular one that adds another character in front of it, 治大國章, which just means govern the great kingdom or rule the great kingdom. Either way, the meaning doesn't change. 大國, the great kingdom, is something that has to be managed with the Tao. And if you are able to utilize Tao principles on a kingdom, it becomes great. This is, of course, just another way to say that as we go through our lives, we too are ruling and building upon the kingdom that is the life belonging to us. So when you utilize Tao principles to manage your own life, you begin to build a great life. The kingdom that is your life becomes more powerful. So great kingdom just means a life of greatness and meaning. So we looked at the chapter, and then as usual, we look for the repeating characters to see if we can spot some sort of repeating pattern, and we did. So we see that there's a couple of introductory lines in section 1, and then we have the main body, which is talking about demons and gods, sages and people. So we'll get into that today, and then a couple of lines as a conclusion. Now, let me also point out that looking for repeating characters is just one of the ways to look for sectional breaks within a chapter of the Daodejing. Sometimes the characters don't repeat, that each line has different characters, there's no poetic structure to them. Then you have to look for the meaning. You have to figure out the sense that the lines make in order to see where they divide. So in this particular case, I can actually make a pretty good argument, a sound argument that says that, well, the second line that I have here, where it says using the Tao to manage the world, I can actually say that this is not part of the introductory section because in terms of the sense that this line is making, it's talking about something that's a little bit different from ruling a large country is like cooking a small fish. So the first line is what we talked about last time. It's deep with many layers of meaning. But the second line is actually something that can be seen as the first line in the next section. That is, you are saying when you use the Tao to manage the world, then the demons of the world have no power. And not only that, but the gods do not harm people, etc. So I could actually draw a red line or move the red line here between 2 and 3 to make it go between 1 and 2, in which case we just have one line that is the introduction to the entire chapter, and then a section in the middle that goes from line 2 all the way to line 7, and then the 2 lines for conclusion. So that's another way to see to get the sense of this overall chapter as well. So previously, all we did was that we talked about line 1, and there's actually even a little bit more that we should say about it today. And the reason is because there are many different ways to apply this line. Previously, we just talked about the surface level meaning plus the level beneath that surface level. At the surface, what it says, ruling a large country is like cooking a small fish. So what we did was that we laid them out. We compared the two. The similarities, the mapping of the metaphor from one to the other. Large country, small fish. On the face of it, it seems as if you wanted to compare a fish to a large kingdom, a great kingdom, large country, large empire, you would want to pick a big fish, not a small fish. But there is a very specific reason why Lao Tzu is using a small fish as the metaphoric device. Here in this table, you can see the reasoning. It is because when you rule a large country or a great kingdom, like cooking a small fish, you don't want to flip it over too many times. You want to do things, you want to be progressive, you want to make reforms, but if you do it too much, you actually risk having things broken apart, just like the fish, breaking apart when you flip it over too many times. So that can be seen as a lesson, as a discussion on moderation. You want to flip it over, just not too many times, not too few times, not too many, just right, somewhere in the middle. And you can apply that to other aspects of cooking a small fish as well, like the heat to apply to that. Not too much, or it gets burnt, charred. Not too little, it'll be undercooked, it'll still be raw. So not too much, not too little, just right. Same with ruling a country, not too much control, it'll become tyrannical. Not too little control or no control, in that case, you've got anarchy. And the outcome of all that is, if the fish breaks apart, that's an indication that you have failed in following the principle of moderation in cooking it. But if it does not break apart, it's evenly cooked, you have succeeded. And the context for the kingdom is peace and prosperity and the happiness of the people. So that's how we mapped it out last time. And what I said was that in the Tao, in this ancient Tao, it's actually rather common to use these daily examples, down to earth, practical examples to talk about life. These are the ways of the ancient sages when they wanted to convey concepts that can be a little bit abstract to everyday people. So they always wanted to use something that everybody can relate to. So cooking a small fish is a popular way to do that. And then we talked about another example, and that was cutting the ox, butchering an ox. So this is a story from Zhuangzi where it appears to be a conversation between the chef who explains the art that he follows to cut up the ox to prepare for dinner. Conversation between that and explaining his ways to the ruler, a duke, that he was working for. Well, it's actually not about cutting the ox, just like cooking the small fish is not really about cooking the small fish. These are both metaphors to explain life. What is the best way to live life? So we use another table to compare the different aspects of the two to make it really easy to see. So for instance, the chef is not relying on visual cues like seeing what he's cutting. He's looking beyond the surface. He doesn't see the entire animal anymore. He's had such long years of practice that he knows where everything is at. He can rely on his experience. He can go by feel. So when you apply that to life, it just means that there are certain things we do in life that if you practice until it becomes second nature, you too become the master at it. So previously, I talked about the quote unquote, the 10,000 hour rule. It just means that if you practice enough, dedicated to a particular skill, and you keep at it for years, you too become a master. And that's actually more significant than whatever kind of natural talent you think that you may have, you may possess or not possess. So that gradual process over years of practice to perfect the skill, to master it, in the Tao, that is the gradual accumulation of virtues. The Tao specifically says that when you are able to master this gradual accumulation, you quickly realize that you are unlimited. That is, you might have thought that you weren't talented at a particular thing. But when you master this particular method of walking on the path one step at a time, you can do it. You can master it at the world-class level. Therefore, you become an unlimited individual. There is nothing you cannot do. You can do whatever you want to do. You become spiritually powerful, and so on. So you can tell that it's all related to these stories that the ancient sages like to tell. So then there's definitely more to it. This little table here is full of little nuggets that we can apply to life. The chef is talking about how when he encounters a complex joint that he wants to cut apart, he slows down, he focuses his attention, he looks for the point where the joints are, and then he'll move his knife between the two, so then the ox will fall apart without even realizing that it's dead. And that's just another way to say that when we encounter a complex situation in life, that you need to take your time, you need to observe, you need to figure out where your effort can do the most good. You pick one or two critical junctures to apply the effort, the whole thing opens up or falls apart or is resolved. So that's something that I have already seen happen in my own life. So if you keep this in mind as you encounter the different challenges in your life, I think that this will come in handy for you as well. So one of the implications from the middle of this table is that when you are able to utilize the Tao to handle things, like the chef using the Tao to cut apart the ox, the knife remains sharp. It's not blunted. So a blunted knife is metaphorical language for wear and tear on a person. If you are a blunted knife, it just means mentally, spiritually, physically, you are worn out. If you follow the Tao, though, like the chef, you remain sharp. That is to say, you remain energetic and ready to do more. And utilizing the Tao in this way will not cause you to wear yourself out. That's the important thing. And then finally, the last part of it, the last part of the story talks about doing things as an artistic pursuit, that no matter what you do, you can turn that into your own personal expression of art, your personal expression of creativity. So especially if it is something that you enjoy doing, you feel like you are at your best in a particular task, then you have found your calling in life. When you do something like that, there is a sense of satisfaction that goes very deep, a sense of fulfillment. then you realize that indeed here, engaged in this particular activity, and for everyone it can be different, engaged in this meaningful task for you, utilizing your own skills and talents and the Tao itself, this is where you are feeling the most alive. This is where you live the meaning of the Tao life. That's what we all want. So then last time, we summarized everything with this particular story. The chef cuts the ox. 庖丁解牛. So 4 characters that you see here. Previously, when I talked about this, I didn't really explain the 4 characters. That's okay. I will quickly tell you what they are. So the first character, Pao, this is no longer used in modern Mandarin. This is ancient classical Chinese utilized a long time ago. The first character is the job title. So it's chef. Ding, the second character there, that's a name. So the first 2 characters together is chef, Ding, Ding being the name. Now, this is the way that in ancient times people referred to professionals in a particular profession. So it would be similar to what we do today when we say Dr. Smith. We begin with the title that indicates what this person does, followed by the name. We even do that with chef, Chef George, Chef Charlie, etc. will be the same thing. And growing up in this culture, chances are you have seen Chef Boyardee, which is the brand name for canned foods. Same thing. So it was exactly how, this is how exactly the convention was followed in ancient China, same idea. Then the last 2 characters is just to cut apart the ox. So the last character there is the character for ox. So then, exactly as we have just talked about, this is a most basic example to explain life concepts. And remember, when we talk about sharpness, that's actually mental, physical, emotional, mental well-being. You want to maintain your well-being. When you live the Tao life, you can do that easily. When you do everything in accordance with the Tao, things become easier, and yet you become 10 times, 100 times more effective. And number 2, intuition. We are very used to engaging logic, the rational mind, in our work. So what the Tao reminds us of is that there's a role that your intuition can play, that if you develop your intuition, your feelings, you can be like Luke in Star Wars, use your feelings, use the Force. It's kind of like that. You become more effective, and that's one of the secrets, quote unquote secrets, of the Tao masters. And then we talked about focusing your attention when you are attempting to resolve something that is complex. It requires more attention, more care, so that you can identify the critical junctures where to cut things apart. And lastly, create art. This is what gives us the greatest feeling of fulfillment as we go through life, to create something that is worthwhile. Create something not for other people necessarily, although it can be, but create something that will be aesthetically appealing for ourselves. So all of these and many more other examples, many more other implications we talked about last time, and it's all encapsulated in this simple phrase that you see at the bottom of this slide. Ruling a large country is like cooking a small fish. So it's amazing how much can be said with just a simple line in the Daodejing. So I think, we're ready to go to the rest of the chapter beyond line 1. We can start with line 2. Now remember, I said that line 2 can be seen as the beginning, the first line of the next section. So we don't necessarily need to group it with line 1 as part of the introduction. It's actually, it can be part of the second section. So line 2 says, using the Tao to manage the world. So let's explore that. What does it mean? Well, for every line in this chapter, we're going to talk about the 2 layers of meaning. At the level of the ruler, the ancient ruler, and also at the personal level of your life and my life. So in ancient times, for the ancient king, the wise ruler, this means using the Tao to rule. So what does that mean? Well, we talked about flipping the fish, not too many times, but just the right number of times, somewhere in the middle. So this was one simple way to talk about the avoidance of extremes. So the wise ruler would understand that extremes, too much or too little, will lead to negative results. Moderation, on the other hand, well, moderation and balance could lead to positive results. So like Goldilocks and the 3 bears. Not too big, not too small, just right. Not too far, not too near, just right. So this is reinforcing the metaphor of cooking a small fish. The flipping of the fish is just one of the ways to express that. We also talked about cooking time, too long, too short. And also, of course, I talked about the amount of heat, too much, too little, etc. And there's other ways that you can look at it. Seasoning could also be too much, too little. So whatever that is, whatever the aspects, just like ruling, as it is with cooking, not too much or too little, it's got to be just right. So living life, it just says that following moderation and balance gives you many benefits. So there's more. We talked about what it is for the wise ruler, so we have to talk about what it is for you and me. So instead of the wise ruler, here I have the wise person, meaning the wise cultivator of the Tao. For the wise person, this also means using the Tao to not rule the kingdom, but to manage your life. So when you are managing your life, you are acting as the absolute monarch. You call the shots for everything that you decide on within your own sphere of influence. So similar to the ancient ruler, this is also cautionary, avoiding the extremes. It's only for your own good. It's applying moderation and balance in the modern world as we go through our lives, whether it's work or social situations. It's all about moderation. And moderation even applies to being moderate. So this sounds like a paradox. So I would like to just explain a little bit. When we talk about the importance of adhering to moderation, adhering to balance, we're talking about absolutely everything, including itself. And what it means is that you don't want to be very strict, ironically, in applying moderation absolutely to everything. Like for instance, it isn't necessary for you to say, for absolutely all the decisions I make, I must be exactly middle of the road. The thing about the Tao is dynamic balance, dynamic equilibrium. And that means you adjust as you go. And what is giving you great results today in your balancing act may not be the same as the balancing act from yesterday. Like a tightrope walker, every step is a different challenge. your body position may be a little different. The wind may be coming in at a different direction. So when you take one step after another on the tightrope, you have to adjust along the way. Every step is a different and unique challenge. Apply that to life. Every day, every situation is a different and unique challenge. So what worked well yesterday may not work well today. So what was moderate and balanced yesterday may be out of balance today. So you don't want to always be strictly in the middle of the road. You want to see and adjust. And we also have to be cautious about using the Tao as an excuse. So this is something that I talk about occasionally. People who study the Tao will sometimes do this, and they are actually doing themselves a disservice. One example is, using the Tao, like I'm on a diet right now. For an entire month, I was being very good, sticking to my diet strictly. So this month, I can let myself go because I want to balance it out. Okay, what I did just now was that I try to use this idea of a balance to give myself an excuse. Above all, in the practice of the Tao, one has to be transparent and open and honest, not just with other people, but with yourself. So if you detect yourself trying to use the Tao to give yourself an excuse, I hope that a red flag will go off and alert you to the fact that you are trying to do that. And the Tao was not intended to be an inventory of personal excuses to give you plausible sounding reasons to avoid doing what you ought to be doing, etc. So this is something to be careful of, especially living day by day. I think a lot of times people will misuse the Tao as an excuse. All right, so when we talk about moderation, when we talk about balance, these are all pretty abstract. I always like to make things more concrete by using real life examples. So I want to provide some examples on too much versus just right. So I'm going to show you this table here. And what I'll do is that for every category, I want to highlight what happens when you are flipping the fish too many times, and what happens when it is just right. So this is basically what not to do and what to do instead, in accordance with the Tao and in accordance with what Lao Tzu is expressing for this particular chapter. Okay, so decision time. Too many flips when making a decision is when you are being very indecisive. You can't make up your mind as to which way to go. Too many flips of the fish will be like yes or no, up or down, this or that, bigger or smaller, more or less. And this is not even a small fraction. This is just a tiny bit of all the possible indecisions that can plague a lot of people. It can be, color, red or blue, time, sooner or later, morning or night, happy or sad, as far as mood, add or subtract, fast or slow. And it can apply to pop culture, Star Trek or Star Wars, and so on. So too many flips just means that you are vacillating back and forth between possible choices. You cannot decide, and you are flipping the fish so many times, it's gonna fall apart. What you want to do is you want to flip it, but just enough. That just means you weigh your options, You make the decision and you move on to something else. Easier said than done sometimes, especially when situations call for many different considerations of the different options. But as ever in Tao cultivation, practice makes perfect. You have to exercise your decision-making muscle. You have to figure out the skill to flip the fish just the right number of times. So what about management? Here, I mean like a work situation when you are in a managerial role and you have a bunch of people to manage, or you are one of the people being managed and you are observing how management is approaching the whole situation. So management has the duty to set up the rules for everyone to follow. They set up conditions, and this can quickly get out of control. That is, the rules can become overly complex. There can be exceptions to the rules. And then sometimes they see that people are taking advantage of the exceptions. So then there are exceptions to the exception. So the exceptions apply except for XYZ. You can have exceptions and then reversal of the exceptions, reversal of the reversal, and so on. So when you get to that point, you are definitely flipping the fish too many times. So how would you flip it just the right number of times? Well, in the Tao, you always want to go for simplicity. You always want to streamline and simplify. Here, that would mean taking a set of complex bylaws and guidelines, distill it, simplify it down to just a simple set of rules that's easy to understand, easy to follow, and then you have to stick to them. You have to avoid creating ever more rules to cover different situations, and then creating exceptions to those. That's the path to complexity. The next one looks, I think, probably interesting. Spiritual tourism. What do I mean by that? Well, this is something that I actually see quite a bit. I see people who are, pardon me, people who are spiritual tourists. That is, they once in a while want to see for themselves what a different tradition is like. So they will visit that tradition, maybe go to a particular temple. They will experience it for themselves, and then they move on to something else. Now, many of them are lifelong spiritual tourists. That is, they just keep trying the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, the next tradition, the next path, the next secret. You know, this applies to books about life as well. The next book, the next technique, the next seminar, the next fad in personal improvement, the next fad in personal spirituality, maybe meditation, different kinds of meditation. It goes on and on and on. When that is the case, you are definitely flipping the fish too many times. It's gonna fall apart. So here, the best way to go about it, according to the Tao, is just try the likely options, select one, stick to it. That's it. It isn't saying you should do just one thing. You can flip it around a few times. You just don't want to keep flipping and flipping and flipping. That's not going to do you any good. The next one, the next practical example is about debates. In a debate, this is probably the top example of flipping the fish. You make your points, you make your arguments. There's counterpoints, counter arguments. There's rebuttals to the counterpoints or the counter arguments. And then there's rebutting the rebuttal, and then the rebutting of the rebuttal to the rebuttal. This goes on and on and on, flipping the fish many, many times. It's going to fall apart. So what's the Tao approach to debates to flip the fish, but not too many times? Well, it means when asked, when people want to know, you can state your position. This is what I believe. This is my position. I am not just vaguely interested and assuming a position of, whatever, and just a willy-nilly, oh, I agree with you. Tao cultivators prize clarity. They want clarity on everything, including different issues that pertain to them, that are important to them. So they want to have an opinion. They want to have a position. They just don't want to have to debate it with other people. Their positions can be very well thought out. They can be very happy to share and inform, but they don't want to spend a whole lot of time to argue about it. So you can definitely flip the fish over a few times. That is, state your position when asked, then decline debate when challenged. Because when you accept the challenge to debate, you begin the process of flipping the fish. Lastly, overthinking. This is related to the first one, decisions, but this applies to areas of life where you don't necessarily need to make a decision, but you are spending a lot of mental cycles thinking about something. Is this correct? What if it's not correct? What if it's the opposite? What if I'm wrong? What if the other person is wrong? What if the other person is wrong about me being wrong? And so on. As you overthink your way to death, you are flipping the fish many, many times. So just right is avoiding the analysis paralysis by trusting your inner voice. So I want to say just a little bit more about that. When I say trusting your inner voice, this actually implies quite a bit. So I want to get more specific. Oftentimes, when you are engaged in what we just talked about, the overthinking, the indecision, oftentimes all of that is coming from a place of fear. You want to recognize, acknowledge the fear. The fear, what kind of fear? Fear of failure, fear of being wrong, fear of uncertainty, fear of change. Fear can take on many different forms. That fear prevents you from making a decision. It prevents you from coming to a conclusion. What if I'm wrong is a statement of fear. I'm afraid of being wrong. When you recognize the fear, though, once you recognize it, it will evaporate into thin air. Once you recognize that you are coming from a place of fear, you begin to have the ability to walk away from that place of fear. Number two, build confidence. When you are lacking in confidence in your own abilities, your own judgment, you are likely to vacillate back and forth. So I want everybody to know, if you are able to hear the sound of my voice, you are wiser than you give yourself credit for. There's a part of you deep within that you can depend upon that will never fail you. The trick is to figure out how to listen to it. And one of the major goals in Tao cultivation is to discover that channel of communication to your inner, wiser, higher self, so that you can be asking questions of your own higher self, your higher self, and then be getting an answer that will never steer you wrong. Number three, learn acceptance. So here, I want to speak against being a perfectionist. Sometimes the flipping of the fish back and forth too many times comes from a perfectionist attitude. It's not perfect yet, therefore I have to flip it over even more times, and then it breaks apart. Acceptance means it doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be, you always want it to be good, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be good enough without being perfect. And you want to accept, once you have gone beyond a certain point in time, what's done is done. It won't improve the situation to dwell on it, to regret it, to maybe second guess yourself. Should I have done that? Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Should I have done it differently? Maybe I should have done it differently. None of that serves you. It's time to move on. So by now, I think you can see we are looking at even more implications of that very profound first line. Ruling a large country is like cooking a small fish, or the way that we can understand it is that managing a great life, building a great life is like cooking a small fish. You've got to have that balance. You've got to know how not to flip the fish too many times. Okay, so this ends our discussion on that particular concept, which is cooking a small fish. Let's get right into the next section. This is the next major concept. It starts on line 2. Line 2 says, using the Tao to manage the world, and then it's followed by a whole bunch of lines. So the first implication of using the Tao to manage the world is line 3. It's demons have no power. So now we have to explain this character, the character for demon. 鬼. So the pinyin looks like 鬼, but it's more like 鬼. Okay, so what is the meaning of this character? Evil spirits, ghost, ghoul, demon, and you might also add devil. I would caution everyone that in different linguistic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, sometimes characters are translated in a particular way, have slightly different connotations. In the West, when we say devil, we can sometimes have sort of a grudging admiration for something positive. You know, he's a handsome devil, we might say. In the Chinese culture, when you use the term 鬼, it is completely devoid of that positive nuance. When you say 鬼, you're just talking about something awful, something that's horrible. So I have a bullet here specifically addressing that. In Chinese, this character is completely negative. In the Tao, 鬼 can represent malevolent elements in life, negative elements, toxic elements. It can be circumstances, it can be people, and 鬼. The thing to note is that when the Tao prevails in the world, 鬼, evil spirits, will be under control. So if you think of them as negative forces in society, when the Tao prevails, there's peace and harmony in society. Therefore, the negative forces are under control. I think when you look at it that way, it can make complete sense. So I want to also extend a little bit beyond this to explain how we can think of evil spirits, 鬼, demons, from a personal perspective. So I want to, here's the way I specifically want to do it. I want to do it with a diagram, and the way that I created this diagram is that I've abstracted the major elements of the concept in a way that is at a high level, that is simplified, so you can immediately grasp upon seeing it. When we talk about 鬼, demons, there are, in the Daodejing, in this chapter of the Daodejing, there are 3 different levels of what we'll be speaking to. At the surface level, Gui is in the mythological, superstition-related sense. And that's the evil spirits, that's the ghost, the demons, etc. So mythologically, the demons inhabits the demon realm, a world, you know, sort of like hell or the afterlife or the bad place, the place of negativity where they all come from. That's the realm of the demons. Now, at the level above that, it becomes more abstracted, which is that it can represent negative forces in society, as I said. So to the ancient ruler, that would be the context, the negative forces affecting a kingdom. To the personal level, demons would be negative forces, internal and external, that affect your life. Your life is your kingdom. You are the king or queen. You are the ruler. So what I want to do is I want to depict that. I want to show you, this is just a representation of that. And I know that it doesn't look like you. That's okay. It's just a representation. I think you know exactly what I mean. Then I want to divide up your world into 2 parts. There's the world external to you. That is the world you interact with, the people that you greet every day, the places where you go to work, traffic on the road, going shopping, etc. That's your world. That's external to you. That is what you see out of your eyes. Okay? Now, there's also the reverse. The internal world, your mental landscape. This is the world that other people don't see. This is the world that you are very familiar with, that you know very well. It is with you at all times. It's what's inside your brain, what is inside your mind. So you are very familiar with it. Other people don't necessarily know what is in your mind, what is on your mind. So when we talk about Gui, the negative, toxic factors and influences can come at you externally and internally. When it's internal, you know, Western expression, we would say, well, you know, he's got inner demons. He's got demons within. Okay, well, it's exactly the same way that the ancient Tao masters thought of it. So the internal demons, they do exist. But then the external, that would be, for example, other people who are the toxic elements in your life. Example, someone or a whole bunch of people who seem to love finding faults, and not just with you, but with everybody else as well. Just following, just trying to find faults all the time. Then there's also some people who actively try to sabotage you, right? I think everybody has seen examples of that. Even if you don't have someone who's actively trying to sabotage you, you know about the people that have tried to do it to others. Then there's people who maybe not necessarily finding faults or sabotaging you, but they want to make fun, they want to ridicule, they want to mock, the mockery. That's also a negative and toxic element in life. Then there's also the critics, the naysayers, the people for whom nothing is ever right, similar to finding faults, except those who are finding faults, it may be like a work-related type of situation. Criticism, it can be beyond that. It can just be someone who's making negative comments about what you're trying to accomplish. So what I'm trying to depict here, and there's, you can, just looking at this diagram, you know that there's way more than just these 4 devils or demons here that is attacking you in life. Literally, we're all besieged on all sides. There's a lot of negative elements everywhere, and some people seem to take special delight in being negative. You probably know a few. So I just want to use the 4 here as the overall representation of those negative elements, and then the rest you can sort of figure out and fill in the blanks for yourself. Now I want to turn our attention to the internal mental landscape. What about the inner demons? What about the factors within you that are also negative and toxic? What could some of them be? Well, fears. Absolutely. It's something that we all experience. We all know what that is like. Fears are definitely negative and toxic. What would be another internal demon? Well, maybe something that we do, maybe a habit that is not contributing to the best in you, maybe your health, bad habits. This could be as bad as addictions. And then negative emotions, even when we're not talking about fears or bad habits, negative emotions can be like anger, rage, it can be like jealousy, it can be depression, it can be suspicions of what other people are up to, etc. It can be extremely negative thoughts. Then selfish motives. Selfish motives are basically self-centric attempts to gain personal profits, to basically bolster one's reputation. Selfish motives are yet another one of the internal demons that we all recognize. We have thoughts about that occasionally. So once again, here I've got 4 different kinds of elements that are just representative of all the possible negative factors that can be the inner demons for someone, for you, for me. This is for everybody. So here, this is just a depiction of how externally and internally there's demons coming at you from all sides. Okay, so keep that in mind. There's more to say about this. So what is the next thing that the Daodejing talks about? Line 4, not only do its demons have no power, this is a scenario when you are utilizing the Tao. When you utilize the Tao, keeping the demons under control, then better things happen, that you are protected from the harm caused by the demons. So let's first examine the context of the ancient ruler. So in the mythological sense, basically the demons are swarming out of the realm, out of the demonic, hellish realm to intrude upon the human world, to inflict harm upon the human world. So that's the mythological depiction. And for the ruler, basically what the ruler can do is utilize the Tao to manage the kingdom. And when that is the case, the people are protected from the demons. Now, the mythological sense is sort of like a battle against the forces of evil, but from the ruling context in the kingdom, it's basically just that you are creating a society that is peaceful and harmonious. So keep those 2 in mind, and we will also explore the personal aspect. Here, it's important to note that the demons haven't gone away. They haven't been destroyed. They have not been defeated. They're still there. But the Tao ensures that they remain in their place. And what I mean by that, from the mythological context, I'm saying that the realm of demons, where they ought to be, where they originate, that's where they are. And they are residing in their place of origin, and they are doing so in peaceful fashion. that the Tao is imposing peace not just on humanity, but on the demons as well. So this being the case, the demons cannot intrude upon humans to cause harm. Therefore, it is as if they have no power or they have lost power. Now that you see the colorful depiction of what it sounds like from the mythological perspective, let us now think about how that example, how the depiction maps to you and me in our everyday lives. Let's go back to the diagram. Let's analyze the mythology-based language, map the metaphor to what actually happens from the human perspective. We started out talking about how you are being besieged on all sides, and one day you discover the Tao. You begin walking the path. The Tao begins to be present in your life. You understand how to utilize the Tao in your life. So I'll depict that by showing the yin and yang symbol here. So the Tao has appeared within. Nobody knows about this from the outside looking in. You know about it because the Tao is something that you hold in your heart. It is something that you understand in your mind. So then what happens? Well, we begin with fears. When there's the Tao in your mind, when there's the Tao as your spiritual companion in your internal mental landscape, the fears that you had turns into courage. So just like when we talked about how the demons have not been destroyed, they have not been decimated, they're still there, but they're keeping in their place. The context of courage from the Tao perspective is that you are not eradicating the demons of fear. True courage is deciding to take action anyway, despite the fears. Okay, so in that way, the analogy works perfectly. Now, the bad habits, what happens when you begin to study and cultivate the Tao? Well, one of the things that you have to do as you start walking the path is to cultivate different virtues. What that is can be different things for different people, but basically you can be replacing bad habits with the practice in virtues. Then, what about negative emotions? Well, those will never ever truly disappear. They will always exist in some form, but what you can do though is to supplant them, displace them with positive thoughts. This goes back to the story that I told before about displacing the weeds with crop, useful crop. Then, lastly, selfish motives. When you understand the Tao, when you understand karmic consequences, and especially when you understand the interconnectedness of all humanity, then selfish motives will transform into selflessness. Like, for instance, compassionate activities that you undertake that is out of the true compassion flowing from the heart. So to summarize, fear, once recognized, it evaporates. Bad habits, these are time-wasting activities that contribute nothing to your life and may even negatively impact your health, and it can include addictions. These get transformed into virtues. Negative emotions, these are things like anger, rage, depression, envy, jealousy, etc. You are displacing them with positive thoughts. And lastly, selfish motives, including personal profits, glorification of oneself, these turn into genuine compassion, being selfless to do things for other people. So let's represent that in this graph. So once you have displaced these negative qualities, transforming them in the Tao to something that serves you, you gain peace. When you have the courage of the Tao, you have peace. When you are able to practice virtues, you gain a measure of peace of mind. With positive thoughts in your mind instead of negative emotions, you are able to calm down, you are able to attain tranquility. And when you are able to practice selfless acts, naturally, that bolsters everything else. You are now well on your way in Tao cultivation, walking on the path. So that's what it looks like internally when the Tao is present, when you are using the Tao to manage your life. It begins on the right-hand side, the internal mental landscape. Now, keep in mind, externally, nobody knows what's going on in your brain. Nobody knows what's going on in your thoughts. But slowly but surely, these internal changes radiate outward to manifest externally and becomes a sort of protection. And this is where I would depict it as a shield, that the protection of the Tao is like a shield. Now remember, we can't change other people. The Tao is not going to magically transform the people around you. It's going to magically transform you. Even though you cannot change other people, you can only change yourself. When you have Tao on the inside, it begins to protect you on the outside. So for instance, for the people who are finding faults, no longer affecting you because you know you've done your best. You're not afraid of those who try to find faults. And what about those who try to sabotage you? Well, they can try, but they won't be able to find weaknesses that they can exploit. You've got the Tao. And those who try to mock you, well, they find no audience for their mockery. After a while, they just go away on their own. It's not funny anymore. And what about the naysayers and the critics? They find that you don't care. And the reason why it doesn't affect you, it's because you're on a mission. When you walk the path of the Tao, you discover the purpose and the meaning of life for yourself. You realize you're on your own personal sacred quest, and you're on a mission. When that is the case, it really doesn't matter what the critics and naysayers say. It bounces right off. It doesn't affect you at all. They have no idea what they're talking about anyway. So that is the protection of the Tao. You can see how this works. You can see why this is so important. Now, let's talk about something other than demons. So in this particular chapter, in addition to the demons, it also talks about deities. And that's going to be puzzling, mystifying to some people. They'll think about how, yeah, I can see the demons are malicious, they are malevolent entities, they seek to do harm, they want to hurt you in some way, but not the deities. You know, the deities would not try to do that. So what are you talking about? The line says it's gods do not harm people. So we're talking about deities harming people like the demons? Well, no, not exactly like demons. I will explain. First, we begin with the character Shen, which is the opposite to the character Gui for demons. So the meaning is gods, deities, and note that I'm using plural here because ancient Chinese mythology has pantheons full of many different deities. So it's definitely plural. So this is the gods of ancient Chinese legends and mythologies. Unlike demons, the gods would not maliciously cause harm. They are motivated by different things. They are not motivated by malice. However, they may meddle. If you think about the gods of the Greek pantheon or Norse mythology, the Roman gods, they loved to meddle in human affairs. So in those mythological stories, full of examples of meddling, the gods meddling in human affairs. And the gods may also decide to punish the wicked. That's, after all, what the gods are supposed to be able to do is to be, judge, executioner all in one. They decide who's wicked, who was not, and they try to mete out punishment, some kind of justice. But then they can be wrong. So either way, whether it's meddling or punishment, they can be causing harm. So this is the context of the harm we're talking about, and we are now looking at it from the mythological perspective. So this is the original meaning. We always want to talk about the original meaning, the base meaning of it. Just like the demons reside in a realm of the demons, the hellish landscape, and the gods, the deities, reside in a heavenly realm. So heaven, paradise, etc., different names for that. So in that mythological scheme, you've got different places where people can be, entities can be. People reside in the world. The gods reside in heaven. The demons reside in hell. That's a simple way to look at it. Now, let's take a look at line 5. Line 5 says, its gods do not harm people. So this is repeated in line 6 again. So I want to talk about what that means. You've already heard what it means from the mythological perspective. Let's talk about what it means from the perspective of the ruler. So what it's saying is that the wise ruler is utilizing the Tao to manage the kingdom, right? So the use of the Tao is protecting people from the gods, not just from the demons, but from the gods too. The possible harm from the gods, as I mentioned, perhaps punishment, divine punishment for the wicked, or what they think is the wicked, or interference or meddling in human affairs. So in the same way as it was for the demons, the Tao ensures the gods also remain in their rightful place. So the demons are in hell, or the realm of the demons. The gods are in heaven, or the realm of the gods. They all remain in their place. Everybody is peacefully coexisting, and they do not intrude upon humans to inadvertently cause harm. That is the original context. Then we need to be clear on what that means for society. The harm represented by the demons will be caused by negativity in society. There will be crime, chaos, unrest. What about gods? Well, the gods will be representing the harm that is caused by well-meaning interference, which can include meting out punishment, for someone who's perceived to be bad. Now, I want to focus a little bit on the well-meaning part of it, because the gods may have good intentions, whereas the demons have the desire to cause harm. So the gods are different from demons in that sense. But in the West, we have a saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So even though you can start out with good intentions, your interference is still going to be causing problems, and that leads to hell, not to heaven. So I think now you have a very clear understanding of the original context, how it applies to society, and how it can possibly apply to one's life. That's exactly what we're gathering here to do. So let's continue. We need to talk about the personal level. We've talked about what it's like for the ruler, for society, to protect against the chaos and the unrest, the crime, etc. Let's talk about the most important thing, and that's you and me, the life that we have to lead. At the personal level, wise cultivators use the Tao for protection. What does that mean? How can we extend from the mythological example and map it to real life, the life that we live? Well, if we're wise cultivators, then we would act like wise cultivators with the wisdom of the Tao. Wise cultivators would recognize when well-meaning friends are trying to interfere or meddle. You recognize that their intentions are good, but you also recognize that their well-intended help can cause unforeseen consequences. And that's external. We have to talk about the internal. Within ourselves, we also have the desire, the impulse to meddle in other people's business. We may as well admit it. As human beings, we all feel that from time to time. So how do we handle it? How do we handle it with the Tao to manage our lives? Well, what happens when we see well-intended interference? When it's directed at you, you can be like, thanks, but no thanks. Or I really appreciate it, but I don't really need the help. Thank you so much. By turning down help, you can sidestep potential issues that the help may bring. Now, what about internally when you are sensing this urge to help other people, this urge to interfere with somebody else's business? When you study the Tao, you know that it can be unwise. You know that the different situations may dictate that, yeah, you really need to help this person, they desperately need it, and here's what you can do. But you can also see a situation where you want to help, but you know that if you were to reach out a helping hand, they would not be learning a particular lesson that they really need to learn. They may form a dependency. You may be actually holding them back on making spiritual progress, and that will be an unintended consequence and actually a harm to them. Therefore, you have to observe, you have to gain clarity, spiritual clarity to know one from the other. You have to practice Wu Wei, minimal actions, so you can help others more, not less. Sometimes by doing less, you can be assisting them more, supporting them more. That's all part of the wisdom of the Tao. Then, line 7, the sages also do not harm people. So let's talk about that. How can the sages harm people? We respect the sages. We think the sages embody wisdom. Now, similar to the gods, we know the sages have good intentions, that they mean well. They, unlike the gods, will not think of themselves as meting out punishment to the wicked. They understand the importance of letting people follow their nature. They won't try to save people from themselves and end up causing more harm than good. So step 1, we need to understand the difference between the sages and the deities. The sages usually understand non-interference, the wisdom of non-interference, whereas if the mythological stories are any indication, the gods don't really know anything about non-interference. They love to interfere. They're always trying to interfere. And part of that is because mythological entities, like the deities of mythology, they are larger than life, fictional human constructs, and therefore their appetites are also bigger than life, larger than life. Their desires are larger than life. Hence the desire to interfere, desire to meddle. So then, in this particular context with the sages, when the Tao prevails, when the Tao is present in society, in the kingdom, the sages and gods are able to actively help people. But what happens when the Tao is gone? When the Tao is not present? Well, what can happen is that the sages and gods can both cause issues inadvertently. Therefore, they may withdraw from people to reduce their influence. So that's yet another possible way to see the interpretation of this section. What I've done is that I've put together yet another graph to sort of depict pictorially what actually happens. Same as what you have seen before, it starts with you, and this is dividing up your world into the external, the world that you experience externally, and the internal world, the world of your feelings and thoughts. So externally, we're talking about interference from others. So we've got deities and sages. These are representing the well-intended help and assistance that other people offer to you. So I've got the emojis with the little halos because these are the holier than thou people. You need help. I'm gonna give you help whether you ask for help or not. Or, oh listen, look, you're doing it all wrong. Let me show you how to do it right. Here's what you gotta do. And then, grabbing the wheel, grabbing the controls from you. So this is what active interference looks like when it's imposed upon you from the outside, from other people, well-intended people. And we can't skip the internal side. The internal side is when you feel the desire to interfere with other people. So your thoughts, also very well-intended. Oh, look, they need my help. They need me. They need me desperately. Notice one thing. This is different from interference from the outside world. When you have this internal desire to interfere or meddle, it's very likely coming from a place of ego. Oh, look at them. They really need me. Only I can help them. I'll show them how to do it right. They're doing it all wrong. And when you're thinking that they're doing it all wrong, you are echoing exactly what a meddler from the external side is saying to you. You're doing it all wrong. Let me show you how to do it right. So that's what it looks like when you have the deities and sages inadvertently causing harm. Now, what you have to do is that when you cultivate the Tao, when there's Tao present in your mind, in your thoughts, it is something that, just like the previous example, it changes you as the first step. It starts by transforming your internal mental landscape. Then, the desire to interfere turns into non-interference, a principle in the Tao, non-meddling, another way of stating that principle. The thoughts transform to, well, it's actually not about me. It's not that I'm the one I'm the only person who can help them. That's egocentric. It's not about me. It's about them. It's about what is good for them. And what may be good for them is for me to offer the help, but not actively impose the help onto them. And the thoughts of, I'll show them, I'll take it away from them and show them how to do it right, that turns into, I'm going to observe and see if it's really a situation where I need to help. When you have those thoughts, you begin to gain peace of mind. And that is what we really want. And again, we cannot change other people, but here the Tao will protect you from external interference. That is to say, you can sidestep possible consequences, hey, thanks but no thanks, and you can graciously appreciate the good intention while not falling prey to the unintended consequence that can be causing harm. So I think you can see that this is a rich topic with a lot of different ways that we can look at it. But now we're approaching the top of the hour, so we have to go to the summary. In our summary, we should talk about what came before, which is cooking the small fish, as a quick nod to the previous section. And when we talked about cooking a small fish, we were stressing moderation and balance. We were also talking about how flipping the fish too many times causes the fish to fall apart. So rather than to be indecisive, flipping the fish many times, you want to be decisive. You want to turn the decision over, but not too many times. That you don't want to get involved in a debate where you're flipping the fish back and forth rapidly, gazillion times. And you want to be decisive in terms of taking action. You want to look before you leap, but you don't want to hold back and never take that leap. That's not what the Tao is about. So this is the quick summary for the cooking a small fish. I wanted to reiterate because today we got a little bit further into the practical applications of the concept. Now, more importantly, we also want to talk about the demons and deities, what they represent, positive and negative. So external demons, what are those? External, negative, and toxic people in your life. These are the critics, the naysayers, people who try to sabotage you, who try to mock you, and so on. Internal demons, what are those? Well, your own self-destructive tendencies, like the bad habits, like the negative emotions, the lack of faith in yourself, all that. So what about the deities, the gods? External, the well-meaning help from others that can be causing unforeseen side effects. And then the internal, that's what we watch out for our own tendency to meddle in other people's business. Now, I think it's pretty obvious when people are begging for help, asking for help, that you are not imposing yourself on them, you are responding to a request for help. And that is when you want to measure the situation, you want to see about the principle of Wu Wei to apply to a situation like that, where you can be actually the greatest help possible. And the greatest help possible is, it may not be, as the saying goes, it may not be that you want to feed them fish, but you want to teach them how to fish. That may be the greatest help. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.